In Senna with an average speed of 244 kilometres per hour, setting the pace yesterday. Let's join our commentary team today, John Watson and Alan Tyndall.
Welcome to Hockenheim for the second and final qualifying session for tomorrow's German Grand Prix. And so far today, as we watch Nigel Mansell really controlling a very major slide there, and obviously on a hot lap, the only significant thing to happen is Patrese considerably moved up the placings, indeed, from 8th to 4th. The situation at the moment is that Senna is still top of the rankings from yesterday with that incredible lap of 1 minute 40.198, a speed in excess of 151 miles an hour. Berger second, Prost third, Patrese now fourth, Mansell was fifth, but it'll be very interesting to see John Watson if he can improve in that. He's certainly trying.
Yes, Mansell is blocking up a break coming into the first chicane, desperately trying to improve on the fifth spot that he is now in, and he's been not an entirely happy boy here. He complained yesterday about being down in power compared to his teammate Alan Prost. Prost was quicker through the speed traps, so Nigel not finding the German Grand Prix and bouncing very violently indeed, hitting that curb in the second chicane really, I think, doesn't do the car any good at all. And I just hope that when he comes in from these laps that he does point out to the engineers that I give that curb a right good whacking, so have a look at the left front to make sure there's no damage, especially with the race in mind. It's coming down this third chicane, a lot cleaner through that, running up the curb a little bit on the exit, and now on the charge down the final straight before he will come into the stadium. Nigel on his first, we believe, out-and-out qualifying lap of Saturday afternoon's qualifying.
1:42.313 is the time we've got to look out for. If he can beat that, he could well move up the placings. He was just a little less than a second behind Alan Prost, who was third quickest yesterday. So the Ferraris were virtually running in order, and he's certainly giving it all he's got. It looks like a good one. 142 point, yes, it's an improvement.
Yes, and it's brought him back into fourth spot now, 42.057. Still 0.3 of a second slower than teammate Prost, but that is an improvement for Nigel. I'm sure when he comes back in after that lap, he'll be thinking, well, I could have improved here, I was a little bit ragged there. Come back in, talk to the team, maybe a couple of minor changes to the car, and he can look forward to going out again and having another shot, and maybe take himself off the second row and get himself onto the front row and split those two red and white McLaren Hondas.
What he did do at that lap was he put the Williams Renault back a row, and that was Patrese, so he was bumped down a position. In sixth fastest at the moment is still Nelson Piquet, seventh is Alesi, eighth is Boutsen, ninth Nannini, 10th Capelli, 11th Bernard, 12th Suzuki, 13th Nakajima, 14th Martini, 15th Warwick, 16th Modena, 17th Alboreto, 18th Cathy, 19th Brabham, 20 Larini, and then we're getting up near the people that may have a bit of difficulty getting into the race. 21 Gugeman, who didn't run yesterday, so he's got himself into the race at the moment. 22 Pirro, 23 Alio, 24 Latho, 25 Donnelly, and that's another story. 26 Wojtek is the last man in at the moment.
Yes, and you say that Alan Prost now out on his first set of qualifying tyres. We believe that Ferrari are running qualifying tyres. We've been watching McLaren earlier in the session, and they appear to be doing a race run rather than going for outright qualifying, but we think that both Prost and Mansell are running in qualifying tyres, and this is the first time we have seen Prost out in the session, so he's got to improve on that 1 minute 41.732. He sat in the pits for 38 minutes 30 seconds, 0.976, so well over half the session Prost has been sitting in the pits watching the monitor and gauging when is the right time for me to go out, and he has chosen this moment, so let's have a look and see how Prost is going to cope. Mansell did improve, so maybe Prost will also be able to move forward, but of course he's got to make up well over a second in time to get onto the front row of the grid.
So the Ferraris are on the attack, but there's no doubt about it, the McLarens are so super confident at the moment that they're using the first half of this session for totally different purposes. They're out on race rubber, they're turning around consistently quick, but nowhere like the times that they did yesterday. And one wonders, you know, what would Prost have to do for the McLaren cars to be called in, put onto qualifying setup, and go out to try and improve it. So here he goes.
Well, that isn't going to make any difference to Alan Prost at 142.669. Again, just under a second slower than his best yesterday, but of course absolutely no use to him for an improvement in grid position. Interesting that Mansell improved, but Prost didn't. So again, maybe the tyre choice is very much of an individual thing. The driver may prefer to run what he thinks is the more durable, but not quite so fast, soft race tyre. Mansell, I would suggest, went on to the qualifying tyre. Qualifying tyre, we know, has been giving up 3/4 of the way around a lap. In other words, its optimum performance starts to fall off. So the last part of the lap may not be entirely satisfactory, but hopefully the first 3/4 of the lap more than makes up for that. Appears to be the case in Mansell, but not for Prost.
The other significant change this afternoon has been Nannini's improvement. Capelli's improvement. He's gone up to 10th place in the Leighton House. And I wonder, are we beginning to see, as has been happening in recent Grand Prix, the Leighton House suddenly come on to form as the weekend develops?
I think it's a possibility. We're watching right now Gerhard Berger in his McLaren. I think this is just a continuation of what we've been watching McLaren do all through this session. But going back to the Leighton House, the car in the last 2 Grand Prix has started from the middle of the grid and has come alive in the race. So they could find a similar situation for them on Sunday. But really, these are the 2 cars that most people's attention is going to be focused on. Gerhard Berger, number 28. So these 2 cars currently on pole position and second quickest front row of the grid, and of course certainly initially it's an advantage to be there, but as I pointed out, the last 3 races have been won by a man who has not started on the front row of the grid. So it's important. At the end of the day, it may not be so significant, but psychologically for a driver it is great to start on the front.
Gerhard Berger, who so far this year had 2 second places and 2/3, a 4th and a 5th, but has yet to win a Grand Prix with McLaren. And that is the very important corner that really starts the lap in earnest, because you've got to get that absolutely right, because this is one of the major straights here at Hockenheim that are so fast. The McLarens in qualifying trim were touching at 201 miles an hour before they came to this point, and that was under braking for the first chicane.
Yes, Berger now he's been in the pits. This is his second attempt during this qualifying session. He was in the pits for 9 minutes, so he's now on a run. This may be just a continuation of what we saw him doing, or this could be a qualifying run.
So Berger riding over the curbs there, as indeed he normally does. We're going to get a replay here. The Ligier and one of the arrows there, it looks like Alboreto, I think, who had a big blow, and in fact it's the Ligier going round at 360. That was quite extraordinary, John.
Yes, Philippe Alliot, he likes to pirouette, and that's a very pretty one. The fans in the stands in front of him will be undoubtedly applauding him. Let's see if he can keep it out of the tyre wall. I think he might just yes, he got away with it. Well, Alliot's we've seen him waltzing a few times during the course of the year. That one was pretty spectacular, and he got away with it.
Well, you probably heard him on Eurosport last evening talk about the fact that they have now got to take part in the pre-qualifying, so he has had a longer weekend than usual. We're back with Senna again. They're consistently lapping, both the McLarens, around the 146 mark.
Gerhard Berger has just gone through there in a 147.455, so I believe they have decided to sacrifice further qualifying on Saturday afternoon, and they're both probably running their cars in as close to a race trim as we can imagine they're going to be in. So don't expect too many fireworks in this session from the 2 McLaren drivers. They are really preparing now for what they're going to be confronted with in 24 hours time on Sunday afternoon.
Well, I don't think I can ever remember such confidence shown in Grand Prix racing that they completely ignore the second qualifying session. It really is an amazing piece of confidence by Ron Dennis. And of course, that time yesterday was shattering, that both cars were in the 140 mark, and nothing has really come anywhere close to that. Prost is the closest at 141.73. So we're watching Ayrton Senna undergo really a race test in a qualifying session, and that is almost a gesticulation to the other teams that McLaren, Honda are back on top. So as Senna comes up to complete yet another lap in a round that consistently is a little bit slower that time, 1:48.572. We are close to qualifying speed because they sit on top of the table after yesterday's stunning times when Senna went round at 1:40.198 over 151 miles an hour, and Berger also over 151 mile an hour average was very close behind him. In third place is Prost. Mansell is fourth, although he has slightly improved his time today. Fifth is Patrese. That's a good improvement for the Williams team, as indeed Boutsen is now sixth. 7th Piquet, 8th Alessi, 9th Nannini, 10th Capelli, and a second qualifying session that so far, John, has been remarkably quiet, really.
Yes, it seems that the conditions really are not ideal to improve on the times from the Friday session. A few people have gone quicker, some people have made significant leaps forward, but generally speaking the times are very, very close indeed to those of yesterday, and in fact that McLaren are not going out and attempting to improve on their first and second positions on the grid and are running their cars probably full of fuel, making decisions about tyres, about aerodynamic setup, is indicative of what the conditions represent. But looking here at Nigel Mansell's Ferrari, bodywork off, wheels off, he was one of the few people that improved on yesterday. He's up into fourth spot. He lost it initially to Boutsen, and he's now back into fourth spot. Boutsen's lost his fifth spot to Patrese, and the thing goes on, but the changes in time are not particularly significant. In fact, the biggest change really has been Patrese, who managed to find nearly a second and a half, but that's more, again, a reflection of the poor performance on Friday and a more normal performance on Saturday afternoon. Here we've got Nelson Piquet coming down into the first chicane. He's one of the cars in the race that has got an onboard camera, so we're going to enjoy, I hope at some point today, a view from Piquet's Benetton Ford, and get an impression of what it is like to drive in that car, a car with a V8 engine, an engine that really all the pundits and experts outside of Ford and Cosworth believed would not be competitive with the multi-cylinder engines from Honda, Ferrari and Renault.
It was interesting to note that so far Piquet actually went quicker last week in private testing here than he has done in qualifying, so that's a little bit disappointment for them.
A lot of those times, Alan, are done, of course, in the cool of the evening. Very rarely do you see qualifying times, and there we've got one of the Leighton houses stopped as Capelli's car, so he's got some form of problem. I wonder, is it the same problem that plagued his teammate Gougelman's car yesterday with basically massive electronics failure? So Capelli's car now being pushed out of the way somewhere safe. But going back to this testing that takes place prior to a race, people come here, spend 2 days, sometimes 3 days, testing. They go away with a set of times with which they're very happy. They come back 10 days later and can get nowhere near it, and it is very easy to mislead yourself during these tests into setting times that are not attainable during the weekend itself, and quite often that is because people run at the part of the day when the air is cooler, it's more dense, it helps the engines, and it is often very misleading indeed. Piquet about to begin a lap, holding up one of the Minardis behind him. He doesn't want that car to pass him at the beginning of this lap. Now he's on the gas, Barilla and the Minardi behind him, probably frustrated and swearing in his helmet that Piquet spoiled that lap. Nelson takes no concern indeed of Barilla behind him. He's only concerned about himself, and he's now on his second qualifying attempt, and shortly hopefully we'll have a clock on him and get a clue as to whether he may improve on the time from yesterday or not.
And Barilla can ill afford to have a lap destroyed, because he at the moment is only currently 28th fastest, so he's somebody in big trouble of getting into this Grand Prix. Piquet, a bit of a slide on there, surprising amount of oversteer there in the Benetton in a modern Formula One car, but he's going to try and improve his time of yesterday, 1:42.926, and he's certainly having a go at it.
Well, he would like to be a little bit nearer to the front. He knows he's got a very good car. He knows he's got a terrific engine. He just has to put those elements together. He's got a lot of cars ahead of him, which is going to be a problem, because if he doesn't catch them in this chicane, the third chicane, he's probably going to catch them as he comes into the stadium, and that can spell trouble for a qualifying lap. But Piquet has a nice clean line through that third chicane, now on the charge down into this stadium section. He's got past the Brabham. He's now got one car, we believe, ahead of him. It's one of the Lola Lamborghinis, but there's probably, well, it's a closing gap and closing quickly. but I think he may just about get away with it. He's got 3 corners to go before he comes across the start-finish line, and with a little bit of luck, he's going to manage that without being, well, the Lola pulled over, let him go through. So Piquet unimpeded, and this looks pretty impressive, I have to say.
Just waiting for the time, 1:42.87. It's an improvement on his yesterday's time. He was 1:42.92 yesterday, so he's fractionally come up, but he's now 7th quickest. So he's not much difference really, John. In fact, yesterday was 5th quickest at the end of the session, so he's not really doing all that well.
Well, his time from yesterday, of course, was only a 1/10 of a second slower than he's just achieved now, but because other people, particularly the 2 Williamses, have gone quicker, that's bumped him back down. So the improvement in time was an improvement, but it didn't alter his good position from the Saturday afternoon. And in fact, as you say, he's dropped down from 5th spot on Friday afternoon to 7th spot in the 4th row of the grid.
One of the Dalaras going through picture there. De Cesaris, now he's another man in trouble. He's been having some very slow times indeed this weekend. He's 30th quickest currently, so at the moment he's out of the Grand Prix, and he's on a flyer at the moment. His best time so far has been way down in the 1:48.188.
Oh, and a major slide from Andrea. He came through the last part of that chicane, gave it a bit too much welly, the back stepped out, got into an almost broadside power slide. He gathered it up, kept it under control, charging on downwards into the stadium, but of course that will not have done a great deal for his efforts in improving on that rather poor 1:48.118 from yesterday. He's done a time which is only a 10th slower so far. This lap we've got to see whether he can further improve, but he's got quite a lot of work to do. He's really got to get into the high 46s to ensure himself starting this race. Well, he's not even bothered. He's come into the pits. Obviously he lost time in doing that, and he's decided to abort. And here we look at it again, getting it up the curve, and look at that. And that's great. I mean, it's great to watch, but of course it doesn't do anything for the time. And he found himself about 6 feet too much to the right in the exit of that corner. Probably had to lift off the throttle to check the car, and he's decided, well, sod that, I'm coming into the pits.
Well, I would say that Andrea De Cesaris, one of the longest members of the Grand Prix club, is at 143 starts, is very unlikely at this stage to get a start tomorrow in the German Grand Prix, so he must be a pretty worried man, I would say, at the moment. Still only 31, John. It's amazing, really, when you think how long he's been around.
Well, he joined me at McLaren in 1981, and he's been around all that time. He hasn't won a Grand Prix. He is a driver who is a very quick driver, and I think he has matured over the years, but probably I feel now time is going to pass Andrea by, and it's a great shame because the potential he did have in the early days in his career, I think if it had been harnessed more productively, he could have done a little bit better.
And we are glad to say that for English and Irish viewers that Martin Donnelly has come up considerably. He's just done a time of 1:45.790, which brings him up into 18th place, and he was well back, and that's a bit of a leaf all round because he also was in danger. De Cesaris now going out again and really has his work to do.
Well, he's got a brand new set of boots on his car, but those could be, when they come out, they're all shiny. I think in fact that might be a set of recycled tires that really take the tires, they put them on a lathe, they spin them, and they shave off the top half millimetre or millimetre of rubber, give them back to the team, and it's in effect a fresh tyre.
Gerhard Berger just going past Yannick Dalmas, one of the one AGS that got through pre-qualifying, and he's like De Cesaris, he's back in 29th, he's in trouble. And Berger still the 2 McLarens, let me just bring you up to date, not worrying about the qualifying session today as such, but using it as a race test. And because they're relying on those sensational times yesterday of 1:40.198 for Senna and 1:40.434 for Berger, that is keeping them at the top of the ratings and on the front row of the grid so far. And we're watching the major incident of yesterday. This is Nannini's huge accident where we think he rode a curb, John.
Yes, I think coming into the chicane, this is the 3rd chicane. They stopped the practice session. He came into the chicane, he hooked his inside front wheel over the curb and just allowed the car to snap oversteer. The car then went backwards into that tower wall. The car bounced back out, a big flash fire from the oil from the gearbox where it got split and spilled on the exhaust. Of course, Nannini was totally unhurt. He jumped out of the car, he disappeared. We didn't even know where he had gone to, but totally unhurt. He was back in the pits. The biggest thing he was concerned about was, why I've written off 3 cars this season. What's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? Benetton, of course, now rushing to build up, to have a third car. They had a tub sent out overnight. They're building that car up so as they will have a spare car for Sunday. But poor Nannini, really, I think, suffering a little bit from that incident yesterday. He hasn't been able to get within a second of his time from the Friday afternoon. He is currently on the 5th row in 9th spot.
Still a pretty respectable time all the same. Berger still doing his journeyman work here this afternoon. And there's Ron Dennis, who's got this master plan, whatever it is, so we're not privy to that, John.
Well, I think that McLaren are very aware of the shortcomings that their car currently is suffering from. And that is, in a race, the car's performance, they can't sustain the level of performance they're accustomed to. They're getting a lot of pressure indeed from Ferrari, from Benetton now, and also from the Williams-Renault. And they're working particularly hard on the aerodynamic of the car. There's a lot they've done in the 2 weeks since the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and of course taking the opportunity to run like this. They've got a comfortable position, they've got the front row of the grid locked in. They're using this 1 hour session really as a pre-race test. They'll do this again tomorrow morning, but the conditions are different. It's cooler, the air's more dense, you get a different sort of reaction. So this is really very good teamwork from the McLaren team. And now we're looking at the clock. We saw that clock counting down. We've got about 1.5 minutes left of this Saturday afternoon qualifying session. Nothing significant has happened. The 2 Williams are the 2 people that have really benefited most from it. Patrese in 5th and Boutsen in 6th. Otherwise, things have more or less stayed status quo. Martin Donnelly dropping down actually to 19th spot in the last couple of minutes, but Martin in the race. He did a very quick lap this morning, a 1:44.6, but of course, again, these conditions, the change in conditions, the change in ambient temperature, track conditions, wasn't possible for him to repeat that time.
And Warwick's just gone in at 16th spot there. He did a 1:45.244 as we watch Berger continue to circulate. Just to remind you, it's still Senna, Berger, Prost, Mansell, Patrese, Boutsen, Piquet, Alessi, Nannini, Capelli, Suzuki, Bernard, Nakajima, Gujamin, Martini, Warwick, Modena, Cafe, Alboreto, Donnelly now back in 20th spot, 21st Brabham, Lorini, Peroni, Alio, Latho, Foytek, and Foytek would be the last one in at the moment because Griard, Dalmas and De Cesaris are outside the magic 26.
Yes, this session now just about coming to an end. The man with the checkered flag is shortly going to go up onto his little rostrum. He's unfurling it, doing it in a fairly sort of slow manner, watching the stopwatch. This has got to be very exact now. The flag has fallen, the session is officially over. People who are on a flying lap, of course, can finish that flying lap, and very often we see dramatic changes taking place on this final lap. And of course, no one's in a position to respond to those particular laps.
Well, I think, John, we may look back on this particular session as one of the great coups of psychology in Grand Prix motorsport, because the confidence of the McLarens to be able to do this and to just ignore the second qualifying session is quite extraordinary.
What it really summarizes is that you've got 2 days of qualifying, you've got 2 days of on-time practice. What you've got is to take every day as if it's going to be the last day. You've got to go out there and go for it on the Friday. You've got to go out for it and go for it on a Saturday. And looking behind us, we see Alan Prost doing exactly that in his Ferrari. He's got a McLaren ahead of him. That's Nigel Mansell on his last attempt at wrestling something from the second row. Flame shooting out of the left-hand side. We saw that in the morning session. Of course, he's got to scrabble past a McLaren, and I'm sure he's not going to get an awful lot of cooperation in that particular task. Gerhard Berger, Mansell looking for a way, not finding it, running very, very wide. That's Mansell looking to hand out of the corner. I get out of my way. I'm absolutely, that was unnecessary, unfair. Why did you do that?
And interestingly enough, despite that blocking, Mansell 1:42.057. He wasn't that much lower. It could have been quite a good lap, John.
Well, I think it would have put him in 3rd spot instead of 4th spot, but Nigel has got justification and reason to feel upset about that. Gerhard Berger is doing what we think is a race run, and of course, well, that's the gamesmanship that comes into Formula One. It is so competitive. Berger was well aware that Mansell was behind him, and he might have said, well, you know, that's tough luck, you know, what can I do? You know, it's the last lap of qualifying, I'm doing a run, I'm in the line, I'm in the groove. Nigel, I'm sorry.
And there you are, that's the situation after the final qualifying for tomorrow's German Grand Prix. Senna and Berger would be on the front row of the grid, the Ferraris on the second with Prost and Mansell, then the Williams on the third, which we saw there with Patrese and Boutsen. Then Piquet is in the next row along with Alessi, that little French hero that keeps doing wondrous things with the Tyrrell. And there you see Nannini, a brave effort. That time was done yesterday, but he's still probably a slightly sore man. Capelli, Suzuki, Bernard, again a good showing there. Nakajima, Gujamin getting in well there in 14th fastest with only 1 day's real qualifying. Martini and Warwick just getting on the thing. And the people who won't be there are Barilla, Dalmas and De Cesaris. We'll be back, we'll come back and see us shortly here on Eurovision, but meantime, over to the break.